In programming, exception handling is the process of dealing with unwanted or unexpected events called errors that might disrupt the normal execution flow of a computer program. In JavaScript, these errors can be of three different types. Syntax errors, also called parsing errors, occur at interpret time and are related to a faulty syntax, such as a missing closing brace when defining a function, for instance. They are uncatchable and must therefore be corrected in order for the program to run. Runtime errors, also called exceptions, occur during execution and are usually related to an invalid user input, a network connection failure, a division by zero, and so on. Unlike syntax errors, runtime errors can be intercepted and handled without necessarily crashing the application. Finally, logical errors occur when the program doesn't produce the expected result and are a direct consequence of a faulty logic implementation made by the developer. The Express framework comes with a built-in error handling middleware responsible for catching any runtime errors the application might encounter, thus preventing it from crashing. By default, it will log the error in the console and respond to the client with an HTTP 500 containing the error message as well as the stack trace in HTML format when not in production. When an error is raised in synchronous code, no extra work is required, as the middleware would automatically catch and handle it, as demonstrated by the following application. However, when an error is raised in asynchronous code, it must be passed to the next function of the controller, as it will otherwise be omitted by Express, since it is not part of the synchronous handler code as demonstrated by this other application. Although useful when the application is at an early stage of development, this default handler shows its limits when it comes to real-world APIs that must be capable of handling multiple types of errors in a different way, like for example responding to the client with different status codes or writing these errors into log files. A naive way to solve this problem would be to implement a custom error handling logic per route, like we did in the login and the sign-up controllers, but it will ultimately make our application unscalable due to a lot of redundancies in the code when adding more and more routes to it. That being said, let's have a quick look at the current error flow of our application and what we can do to improve it. In the current state of the application, any runtime errors thrown either by the service layer or the data access layer are intercepted by the router layer and then converted into a standard HTTP 500 response as illustrated by the following schema. In the first case, when an error is thrown by a service, it is directly caught by the calling controller. In the second case, when an error is thrown by a repository, it is let through by the calling service, as it doesn't have a try-catch structure, to then be handled by the controller. Although this approach technically works, the error response sent by the controller doesn't provide enough context for the client to know what went wrong with the request. So, in order not to give the controllers more responsibilities than they should have, we're going to override the default error handling middleware by creating our own and modify the controllers so that any errors raised in the underlying layers are simply caught and rethrown to this middleware. This way, all the errors will be centralized and processed by the same component, allowing it to execute the appropriate logic according to context.